"You won't stay with her after this," the doctor said in a flat, almost bored voice, like she was listing side effects. Room 314, 4:26 p.m., gray linoleum floors, the sharp smell of disinfectant, a heart monitor blinking green numbers I didn't understand but couldn't stop watching. I asked her to explain, calmly at first, then more firmly. I demanded details, because that's what you do when someone casually drops a sentence that rewrites your entire life. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned back to the computer, typed something too fast, then abruptly shut the screen. Her face drained of color. Not concern. Fear. Real, unfiltered fear. Her fingers trembled as she stood up and walked around the desk, putting physical distance between herself and the monitor. Then she said it, quietly, urgently. "You need to leave, right now." No apology, no explanation, just an order. I stayed where I was, asked what she saw, asked why she was acting like this. She wouldn't look at me. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, like she was trying to stay composed and failing. A full second passed, then another. Finally, she whispered, "If you see it, you won't be able to unsee it, and you won't stay with her. I'm trying to spare you." That was the moment everything shifted. Doctors don't talk like that. Not unless something has already gone very wrong. I took a step forward. She moved to block me. Too late. I caught a glimpse of the dark screen before it powered down completely. It reflected the room, her face, mine, and something in her expression told me the truth was already waiting. I didn't know what I was about to lose. I only knew I was done being protected from it. She stepped in front of the monitor like her body alone could erase what was on it. "Please," she said, and that word finally slipped through. Not professional, human. I asked her once more to explain, slower now, watching the way her jaw tightened before she answered. "This wasn't supposed to be visible to family members," she said. "It was flagged. Internally. I thought the system glitched." Her eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. "I'm asking you to leave before you make a decision you can't undo." That was when I noticed the detail that didn't fit. The file name still burned faintly into the corner of the black screen, like an afterimage, a long string of numbers, a timestamp, and one word at the end, external. Hospitals don't label internal scans that way. I pointed at it. She inhaled sharply like I'd just said something dangerous out loud. "Who else has seen this?" I asked. She hesitated. Too long. "Compliance," she said finally. "And legal." Then, quieter. "And one specialist who asked to be removed from the case." Removed. Not reassigned. Removed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Once. I ignored it. Asked her what the scan showed. She shook her head. "I can't explain it without showing you." Another pause. "And if I show you, this becomes real. For you." She wasn't talking about my wife anymore. She was talking about me. I reached past her and turned the monitor back on. She didn't stop me this time. She just closed her eyes. The image loaded slowly, line by line, resolving into something I didn't recognize at first. Shapes where there shouldn't have been shapes. Markers where anatomy didn't make sense. Notes in red. Too many notes. I leaned closer, scanning the margins, the measurements, the comparison tabs stacked on the side. Then I saw the prior scans and realized this wasn't new. It had been growing. And she knew. I asked her how long. Not what it was, not how bad, just how long. She didn't answer right away, which was already an answer. She clicked through the archive, pulling up older scans, each one dated, each one annotated by different hands. 6 months, then 9, then a year. The progression was subtle at first, almost elegant, like something that knew how to hide. The red notes multiplied as the dates advanced. Measurements grew. Margins changed. Risk assessments shifted from monitor to concern to a word no one ever wants to see in a medical file. Aggressive. "You saw this before today," I said. Not a question. She nodded once, eyes still on the screen. "I flagged it after the 3rd scan," she said. "I was overruled." "By whom?" Another pause. "Your wife requested a different interpretation, then a different specialist, then a different facility." Each word landed heavier than the last. This wasn't neglect. This was management. My phone buzzed again. I checked it this time. A message from my wife, sent 12 minutes earlier. Did they say anything yet? Don't stress. I'll explain later. I showed it to the doctor. She didn't react, just closed her eyes for a second, like she was deciding how much truth I could handle in one sitting. She's known, the doctor said quietly. Longer than you. I felt something shift, not violently, just enough to break alignment. Pieces still there, just no longer fitting. I asked why I wasn't told. She answered honestly. Because every time we tried, your wife intervened. New consent forms, new privacy restrictions, she made sure you stayed out of the loop. I looked back at the scan, at the notes, at the timeline that made everything else suddenly make sense. The late nights, the sudden solo appointments, the rehearsed calm. I finally understood why the doctor told me to leave. She wasn't protecting my wife. She was giving me one last chance to walk away before I realized what I'd been living next to. I asked the question I'd been avoiding since the moment the screen lit up. Why hide it from me? Not why delay treatment, not why change doctors. Why lie to the person sleeping next to you every night? The doctor leaned back against the desk like her legs suddenly couldn't hold her. Because she needed time, she said, and because you would have stopped her from what became clear almost immediately. She pulled up another tab. Not imaging, documentation, legal language, dense, intentional, consent forms I'd never signed, amendments dated weeks apart, clauses added, removed, reinserted. My name appeared only once, buried in a paragraph labeled non-essential parties. I read it twice to be sure. I wasn't excluded by accident. I was categorized. She consulted an attorney before she consulted us, the doctor continued, about 3 months after the first red flag. I laughed once, quietly, because the alternative was breaking something. An attorney, not a second opinion, not a treatment plan, damage control. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a missed call. Her name. I declined it without thinking. The doctor noticed. She doesn't want you here, she said. Not because she's afraid of losing you, because once you know everything, her leverage disappears. That word stuck. Leverage. It didn't belong in a hospital room, but it fit too well to ignore. I asked what she planned to do. The doctor hesitated, then told me. A trust. Early. Quiet. Structured around anticipated incapacity. Control transferred automatically. Assets shielded. Decisions centralized. All triggered by a diagnosis she already had, but pretended she didn't. She hadn't been preparing to fight an illness. She'd been preparing to survive me. And suddenly, the doctor's warning made sense. After this, I wouldn't stay. Not because of what she was facing, but because of what she'd already done. I left the office with my head intact and my hands steady, which surprised me more than anything else. The hallway felt longer than before, lights too bright, footsteps too loud. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I needed her to believe everything was still under control. That was the only way this worked. By the time I reached the parking garage, I already knew what I was going to do. Not confront, not accuse. Disappear just enough to let her finish what she'd started. That night, I played my part perfectly. Listened. Nodded. Let her talk about routine follow-ups and minor findings. She watched my face closely, searching for cracks. I gave her none. I even apologized for stressing the doctor out. That earned me a smile. Tight. Relieved. She thought she still had time. Over the next 3 weeks, I let her think she was winning. I signed nothing new but questioned nothing either. When she suggested moving certain accounts for simplicity, I agreed. When she said her lawyer needed updated documents, I forwarded them myself. I documented every request, every timestamp, every instruction, screenshots, call logs, emails archived off device. She was careful, just not careful enough. The real mistake came when she escalated. A medical power of attorney draft appeared in my inbox one morning, framed as just in case, dated before my appointment, backdated, sloppy. That's when I knew she was rushing. Fear does that. It shortens timelines. I signed it, not because I trusted her, because it triggered the clause her attorney had overlooked, the one that required full disclosure once authority transferred. She didn't realize it. Not yet. She went to sleep that night thinking she had finally secured everything. I stayed awake, watching the clock, waiting for the moment her protection turned into exposure, and it was coming fast. The disclosure request hit the system at 6:02 a.m., automated, unforgiving. Once the power of attorney activated, compliance protocols didn't care about intentions or fear. They cared about completeness. Every amended consent, every altered scan, every consultation routed away from me, all of it queued for review. I was copied on the notification because the clause said I had to be. She hadn't read that far. She woke up confident, made coffee, asked if I wanted eggs. I said no, and watched her phone light up on the counter. First call ignored, second answered with a forced laugh that died halfway through the greeting. She turned away from me, pacing, whispering, "I don't understand," like confusion might buy her time. It didn't. I could hear fragments, retroactive, conflict, mandatory disclosure, words that don't reverse once spoken. By noon, the hospital had reassigned her case to an independent panel. By 1, her attorney was calling me instead of her. I let it ring. By 3, she came home early, eyes red, movements sharp and unfocused. She asked what I knew. I told her exactly when I knew it and how. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just listed facts in order, like a chart reading. She tried to justify it. Then she tried to minimize it. Then she tried to scare me with outcomes she could no longer control. None of it landed. The moment she hid the truth, she gave up the right to manage how I reacted to it. That night, she slept on the couch. Not because I asked, because she couldn't stay in the same room. The next morning, she left before sunrise with a bag packed too carefully for it to be spontaneous. She thought this was still about illness. It wasn't. It was about what happens when you gamble on silence and forget that systems don't feel sorry for you. And they were just getting started. By the end of the week, silence had turned into pressure. Not loud, not dramatic, administrative, the kind that suffocates slowly. Letters arrived instead of calls, certified, neutral language, requests for clarification that weren't really requests. I read every line while she hovered in the background of her own life, waiting for updates I no longer shared. The independent panel wanted timelines. The legal department wanted intent. Compliance wanted to know why a spouse had been deliberately excluded from material medical decisions. None of them liked the answers. She tried to regain control the only way she knew how. Apologies first, carefully worded, emotional but incomplete. Then explanations that shifted blame without naming it. Doctors, protocols, stress. When that failed, she changed tactics. Anger, accusations. She said I'd betrayed her at her weakest moment. I didn't respond. I was too busy responding to people who actually mattered now. On Thursday at 2:41 p.m., an email came through marked urgent, legal hold. Her attorney was no longer representing her. Conflict of interest, too many inconsistencies, too many things done on her instruction, without proper disclosure. She read the message over my shoulder and sat down hard, like gravity had doubled. That night, she finally told me the truth she thought would soften everything. She said she'd planned to tell me eventually, after things stabilized, after decisions were locked in, after I couldn't interfere. She said she did it to protect herself, to protect us. I asked her one question. Would you have told me if nothing forced you to? She didn't answer. That was enough. I packed a bag and left before midnight. Not in anger, in clarity. Behind me, her plan was unraveling file by file, timestamp by timestamp. Ahead of me, something else was waiting. A meeting, mandatory, scheduled without her input. The subject line said it all. Final determination pending. And this time, she wouldn't be in the room. The meeting took place in a glass conference room that smelled like coffee and toner, not antiseptic. No monitors, no bedside manners. Just 3 people across from me who already knew the outcome and needed procedure to catch up. They didn't ask how I felt. They asked when I first noticed inconsistencies. I gave dates, times, exact wording from emails she'd sent months apart that contradicted each other in subtle ways. I watched them mark checkboxes without reacting. This wasn't emotional for them. It was structural. They explained what her actions triggered, not criminal, not yet, but violations, breaches of protocol, manipulation of consent pathways, intentional exclusion of a legal spouse from material information. The phrase pattern of behavior came up twice. That's when things stop being mistakes and start becoming evidence. I nodded, took notes, answered every question once and only once. No speculation, no interpretation, just facts. Halfway through, one of them asked the question that changed the room. Did she benefit from delaying disclosure? I said yes and explained how. Asset control, decision authority, time to restructure. Silence fell after that. They didn't need more. When it ended, they told me the panel's recommendation would move forward without her input. Her diagnosis wouldn't change, but how it was handled would. New oversight, mandatory transparency, and a formal record of how it got here. I walked out knowing she'd lost the one thing she'd fought hardest to keep, control over the narrative. She called me that night, left a voicemail, no anger now, just bargaining. She said we could still fix this, still be a team. I deleted it without listening to the end, because teams don't operate on withheld truths. And whatever was coming next, I would face it informed. Unlike her. The determination arrived on a Monday morning, delivered the way all irreversible things are, quietly, officially, without drama. The panel concluded that her medical care had been compromised by intentional manipulation of disclosure pathways, not out of panic, not confusion, strategy. The record reflected that clearly. Oversight was imposed, independent advocates assigned, every future decision documented and mirrored to external review. She no longer had the privacy she'd engineered so carefully. Transparency replaced control, and it was permanent. She showed up at my door that evening without calling first. No makeup, no script, just exhaustion. She said my name like it was a question. I listened. She talked about fear, about feeling trapped between outcomes she couldn't control, about believing she was protecting herself from abandonment. I let her finish. Then I told her something she hadn't considered. You didn't protect yourself from losing me, I said. You guaranteed it. The silence after that wasn't hostile. It was final. She asked if I'd stay now that everything was exposed, now that the truth was out. I shook my head. Truth under pressure isn't honesty, it's collapse. I explained that what broke us wasn't the diagnosis, or the prognosis, or even the deception itself. It was the calculation, the decision to manage me instead of trust me. That kind of choice doesn't heal, it only waits. When she left, she took nothing that mattered, no documents, no leverage, no illusions, just the understanding that the future she'd planned no longer included me, and that it was her own design that removed me from it. For the first time, she wasn't preparing for an outcome, she was living in one. 6 months later, my life looked quieter, smaller on the surface. No emergency calls, no strategy sessions disguised as care, just days that made sense in the order they arrived. I stayed informed about her condition through the required channels, the same way you stay informed about weather in a city you no longer live in. Accurate, distant, necessary only when it intersects your path. She tried once more, a letter this time, handwritten, careful, no blame, no excuses, just acknowledgement. I read it fully, then I filed it away without response. Closure doesn't always require participation. Sometimes it's simply the refusal to reopen what was already understood. People still ask what finally broke us. They expect a dramatic answer. Betrayal, illness, fear. I tell them none of that is precise enough. What ended it was intent. The moment she decided that love could be managed like risk and that silence was safer than truth. Once you see that clearly, staying becomes impossible. I didn't leave because she was sick. I left because I was excluded by design. And when the truth finally surfaced, it didn't destroy me. It clarified everything. Some losses hollow you out, others free you. This one did both.